Hey guys, it's a soft take, or newly referred as a
dumb fucking moron.
Hila Klein, once the reserved counterpart to Ethan. She was known for her awkward charm and subtle humor. In the early days of H3, she was the shy, friendly presence besides Ethan's loud personality. The things she would say were once lighthearted or grounded.
She left last time as an Israeli. She enters today as an American. Hila, how does it feel? Tell me everything.
I feel like now I can really ride it, you know, we got the flags and the balloons. Like, I feel like every old person on a mobility scooter, they always have this like personalized touch to it.
Absolutely.
And now we got ours.
Right.
To have shifted into someone who appears more vocal than thoughtful.
Adam McIntyre needs to just like disappear. Yeah, Sam Cedar, another one I'm ready to burn. I know, you already did most of the work.
And also someone who seems to donate money to a slop tuber who hosts a show called Ultimate Review that picks apart sexual allegations. And also LOLCal Live, a podcast co-hosted by Keemstar, someone that previously made her life hell. But first, who is Hila actually? She's the co-host of a podcast with her husband who's turned arguing with everyone into a full-time sport while she contributes to the show by slowly rotating in her chair. She's the founder and CEO of Teddy Fresh, a streetwear brand with a questionable theme that appears to sometimes allegedly borrow designs. Teddy Fresh also has a good causes section on their site, proudly listing charities they claim to support, which is a great thing. I appreciate them for doing. However, let's just say that I found out that not everything on that list checks out, which I will get into later on in the video. She loves to draw, present her unique clothing style on social media, and she is also someone that gets particularly vocal when criticism of Israel arises.
We're stuff that.
It's not like Israel's going to do a precision strike on Hassan. They don't fucking...
Yeah,
but it is dangerous. It's a war zone.
Sure, it's a war zone.
They may.
But what?
He was in the running for anti-Semite of the year. They may.
Nah,
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
They're not.
And this is where she gets quite a lot of backlash. It's not because she's from Israel or that she served in the IDF. Well, actually that could be reason for some. It's mostly because of the dehumanizing language she uses for Palestinians and her relentless defense for Israel. Also, I just want to be clear, I don't want to make Hila responsible for Ethan's flip-outs, but you cannot be dismissed as a silent bystander while Ethan spreads false information. And when she does decide to chime in, it's either about Hassan, defending Israel, or defending their takes. Took one look at her and assumed that she's an undocumented migrant worker that can't speak English.
They all go with this narrative that it was his mom. It's just unbelievable.
But what about them talking about Hassan going to Gaza?
Was like, I'm thinking of going to Gaza.
Until I found out they don't have like a 5-star suite for me with private security waiting there.
I would have bet my goddamn house that he would never step foot in Gaza. It's insanely pathetic. Somebody please.
Well, and it's the same thing. To bring it back to the song just because, but it kind of is the same thing. Like, I was thinking about going to Gaza.
Yeah.
I also wanted to give a...
Sorry, guys, I'm not going to this war zone unless they can...
So much to the point that they started fantasizing how his visit to Gaza could look like.
They managed to keep the hostages alive. You can go be in the tunnels, I'm sure.
I mean, he's a high-value hostage for Hamas. He's an American citizen.
Right.
They've kidnapped Arabs and Muslims before.
If he's actually just worried about the Israeli side, like seriously, they can take him to the tunnels and he'll be safe.
If he entered through Rafah, which is the Egyptian crossing, and just went into Gaza like that, I think there's probably a more likelihood that he'd be kidnapped by Hamas than precision striked by Israel.
Yeah.
And then pedal it all back.
It's literally just a silly joke.
We're just criticizing you.
It's literally just a silly joke.
It comes across like a fucking pager joke.
It comes across as a pager joke.
Hassan should go to Gaza. And if he doesn't, he should be severely judged by his audience for being a total fucking coward.
I mean, it's part of why I judge him. He doesn't know shit about that conflict. He's never been to Gaza, never been to Israel. He doesn't know shit about it.
No, he doesn't.
He does not. But he talks like with such authority. Oh my God. You would think he's been there like 5 times since October 7th already.
This small bit of premium content is just a tiny part of a larger pattern. Hila's reasoning is just as inconsistent. Let's try and understand Hila's logic here. Hassan can't understand the conflict because he hasn't been there, as if lived experience is the only way to grasp reality. If we were to even go with this logic, then why does she not know about what's going on with the Tesla stock and Elon Musk's actions despite living in the very country where it's all happening?
Tesla's getting creamed lately. Like they're
down like
40%. Out of them and like bombing, they're firebombing their factory and shit.
USA.
Like,
I'm a little like I don't know if I'm out of the loop, but did something specific happen that all of a sudden this is happening?
I mean, That's quite an integral part of the ongoing events in the United States and its political landscape, while selling anti-Elon shirts in her own shop. And by the way, if you're watching this and thinking, oh, how come all the soft take can do is bring up Hassan? And well, the answer to that is simple. I don't. They do. What am I supposed to talk about when almost all of their content is referring back to Hassan? I just follow the storyline they keep writing. But anyway.
It's really interesting how we just cannot criticize him.
And then
whatever we dare to say about him in a criticism manner, we are a threat. We are backing genocide. We're children killers. Myself, that's what they say about me. It's like, no, I'm just criticizing you. I'm allowed to criticize you and still want good stuff to happen for Palestine. Like, I can do both.
It was really hard for me to find those moments where she shows that she wants good things to happen for Palestine. The ones I found are in this video. But let's talk about the labels Hila deals with. And could it be that they come from Hila's patterns on the H3 podcast? Patterns of deflecting, dismissing, and downplaying Israel's actions.
It's so complicated.
Yeah.
From their perspective, it's like, these guys.
But they go specifically to people who they know are terrorists, and they have a history of that stuff, and they know they have guns.
And the thoughtful criticisms Hila shares about her self-declared enemies looks something like this.
What is this frame, bro? Why are you just like in the corner?
It's absolutely
Frame
terrible.
your shit up, man. He changed his background.
I hate
AB
it.
would love that. Although,
Hey, Hassan, I
looks
hate
like a
your
pet
new
store,
background.
frankly. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I think his room looks better with
It
like
makes
Hamas.
no sense.
Or hear about MacLeod.
Banana, bro.
Disgraceful to participate in a snark page. It is. And
I think it's
Ethan
disgraceful as a...
is allowed to point it out.
And also,
And
as
if
a...
that's too much for you, maybe get off the internet.
Right.
And
or at least get off...
maybe don't work for a reputable company like Red and Link. You don't deserve to work there.
Or this very reasonable criticism of Sam Cedar.
Sam Cedar, another one I'm ready to burn.
By the way, Sam Cedar agrees with me. I just saw a clip of him the other day being like, saying that he's two-state.
I don't know.
Two-state.
I
was like,
he agrees with you because he also like protects Hassan at all costs.
You're ugly and you're dumb and you're not funny.
Hila and Ethan have repeatedly stated that they oppose Netanyahu and his government.
So here's what I'll say about Israel. Listen, this isn't the first time I've said it, and I'll say it and many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs. They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal. He's made a coalition of the most like radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis.
They voted against Netanyahu.
You mentioned that we lived in Israel and we voted against Bibi. Even Ethan, we both voted.
Yeah, I was in I think 2 elections, and both time I voted against him.
So like, what do you guys want from us?
And here is them showing empathy for Palestine and being pro two-state solution.
The problem is the extremes on both sides. The Orthodox Jewish people cause trouble, and the terrorists.
Well, you know,
who do all the terror attacks on the other side, they cause the trouble. But I feel like if you ask most people, especially my age, they'll be like, just do whatever it takes. Just
they don't
do
care.
It. Split it. Do the two-state solution. Do whatever it takes.
And by the way, I find it quite fascinating to see how their public statements and attitude has shifted over time.
A lot of drug problems.
The regular people there are, I mean, everyone feels bad for them, even on, the Jewish side.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just...
What can you do?
They're just stuck there.
On the surface, they seem to present themselves as neutral voices, people who acknowledge the suffering on both sides, distancing themselves from the more extreme Zionist rhetoric.
Yeah, it's being Israel is bombing the fuck out of Gaza right now, which is a horrible humanitarian tragedy that's happening.
But if that's the case, why do so many see them as pro-Israel, anti-Palestine, or even Zionist apologists? They themselves cannot grasp as to why. Could it be because of Ethan and Hila saying things like they want to travel to Israel to show how beautiful the country is and how diverse its people are, all in the midst of a genocide?
We're planning to go to Israel in June with my parents and all the kids. It's going to be such a great trip. And I'm actually really excited to go there. I want to show you guys.
You haven't been there in so long.
What I want to do is show you guys how I see Israel. Because you don't see that. When you listen to Hassan and you hear all these fucking mega lefties talking about it, like it's some super racist, like crazy, like Jim Crow style of society.
And after making jokes about Hassan not going to Gaza for months on end, they kind of seem they want to be a bigger part of their own joke as well.
Currently, we're waiting for like a a peace
We put
or
the-
deal or
yeah.
something to go into effect.
Yeah, we put the visit off while the war is
Because we want to
happening.
come with the kids and
I don't want them to have to deal with sirens and
yeah.
seeing all that hearing all that shit, you know?
Or is it Hila's constant IOF apologies instead of finding one critical word about her own service or the IOF in general?
To this
And
day,
there's
that's
other
not
countries that have mandatory service armies.
very common.
You're just being racist. If you have a problem with the whole country,
Including,
that's
by the way,
racist.
Turkey has mandatory military service.
Yeah,
Unless you're rich
and
enough
my
to flee the
parents
country.
were not the rich kind that will pay to get me out. But even if they were, they would not agree to that because they think it's important to serve like everybody else in the country.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a very selfish move to decide, okay, I'm not going to do it, but
You have to
everybody else
understand,
will.
like-
I mean, when you're growing up with constant terror attacks, the army is a necessity.
Yeah, it's just
For
a
one
statement back.
person to decide, I'm not going to do it, is a very selfish decision because
ground-
meanwhile you're not doing it, everybody else is doing it and putting their life on hold. Very important years of your personal development, you're putting it on hold to go do this, and it helps nothing with your career afterwards. You finish it, then you start.
First of all, you would also be putting your life on hold because you'd go to jail for refusing mandatory service. And secondly, if it's selfish to not serve in the military because everyone else is putting their life on hold, then how selfish is it to go along with mandatory service and contribute to the oppression and killing of Palestinian civilians? Hila framing the issue that it's simply about mandatory military service is ignoring the unique and highly controversial role of the Israeli military in enforcing occupation. While other nations have mandatory military service, most do not involve an ongoing military occupation of another population. Comparing Israel's conscription to countries that also have conscription, such as Switzerland or South Korea, is ignoring a massive difference. And labeling criticism towards the IOF as racist against the whole country is attempting to shut down the conversation. It's just as Hila said.
It's like, if this is your argument, we're never going to be able to talk.
Well, so far in these few clips alone, you mirrored Israeli government rhetoric by portraying refusal to serve as betrayal rather than moral stance, and you framed criticism for joining mandatory service as racism, despite the IOF's well-documented war crimes. But that's not everything. Let's keep going. Hila seems to deny Israel to children.
People are saying Israel does that on the daily, the idea
I don't. That's not what I'm talking about. See, that's what you're doing. You're excusing people being burned alive and kids being murdered. You're saying Israel does that on the daily. Now, I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. So are you in favor of an Iraqi terrorist?
Here's my response to that just by showing the following. An article from 2022 states 2022 to become the deadliest year for Palestinian children in the West Bank in over 15 years. An article from 2023 marks the deadliest year on record for children in the occupied West Bank. This article is about 1 month before the October 7th attacks. Now, it is worth quickly disclosing that the next few articles I'm about to show occurred after she said that she denies this. But Hila never seemed to have changed her mind about this, at least not publicly. An article from 2023, after the 7th of October, more than 3,195 children in 3 weeks. In 2024, the Gaza Strip was recognized as the deadliest place on earth to be a child. And finally, since the breakdown of the ceasefire on the 18th of March 2025, the Gaza Strip has left at least 322 children and 609 injured, constituting a daily average of around 100 children or maimed over the past 10 days, according to an article by UNICEF.
Kids being murdered. You're saying Israel does that on the daily. I'm not denying that. So are you
This kind of disbelief in what Israel is capable of seems to have rubbed off on her husband, Ethan, who portrays the country in surprisingly positive light.
People are so weird about Israel media because, like, you'll see people all the time being like, even according to Israel media, they said this happened. But then at the same time, it's like, oh, she reads Israel media, so she's obviously brainwashed and a Zionist. It's like Israel is a free society with free press. It has the whole gambit
range of
media
opinions
sources,
in the press.
just like America does. You know what I mean?
Israel seems to have a wide range of media sources. Calling it free press is again comfortably painting Israel in a very nice picture. When you are aware that pressures from the government, military censorship, and violence against journalists are a recurring theme, and then you have Ethan calling Israel a free society here, what could it look like when Ethan, whose wife served in the IOF, comfortably states the opposite of what is widely evident? Freedom of speech, assembly, and the right to protest are enshrined in Israeli law. But are they equally distributed? Reporters Without Borders states Israeli journalists identified as Arab face more intimidation while working. Since the start of the war in Gaza, the authorities have intensified repression against these journalists, as well as against foreign and Israeli journalists who deviate from the government line in their coverage of the war. Organized crime networks try to restrict coverage of their criminal activities, and in the ultra-orthodox media, women are almost completely excluded. Time. In the deadliest period for journalists in modern history, at least 131 media workers have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the start of Israel's retaliation for the Hamas attacks of October 7, 2023. International media groups are alarmed by Israel's naming 6 Al Jazeera journalists as terrorists. Article 19. Since Israel's war on Gaza began in October 2023, the devastating impact on journalists has been clear. They have been killed in unprecedented numbers, threatened, and harassed. Protecting press freedom remains critical to documenting human rights violations, conveying the voices of Palestinians in both the West Bank and Gaza, and enabling accurate reporting. The Guardian. Jeremy Bowen, the BBC international editor, has accused the Israeli government of blocking journalists from Gaza because of scenes they don't want us to see. Despite all of this, Ethan and Hila continue to paint Israel as a bastion of free expression, and then Hila continues to reinforce a sanitized image of Israel, brushing off any real concerns about press freedom and safety.
I can't get any security assurances against Israel, obviously.
Well, bro, it's not like
Israel that is worried
Look,
about.
it's not like Israel's going to do a precision strike on Hassan. They don't.
Yeah,
but it is dangerous. It's a war zone. Like, I agree, it's dangerous.
They might.
Sure,
They
it's
may.
a war zone.
They
They
might.
may.
But what?
He was in the running for anti-Semite of the year. They may.
Nah,
And
it's
I
a
don't think
different
you guys
world.
understand
Yeah, it's a
Israel. It
different
doesn't work
world.
like that
They're
there.
not.
Just 3 days after the stream, American Al Jazeera journalist Hossam Shabat and Palestine Today journalist Mohammed Mansour were killed by the IOF.
And
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
As if the country is incapable of such actions, even though reports from groups like Reporters Without Borders, Human Rights Watch, and Amnesty International show otherwise. Here are some more cases that really prove that Hila knows what she's talking about. In 2003, American student and peace activist Rachel Corrie attempted to stop the demolition of a Palestinian home by standing in front of an Israeli bulldozer. Despite her non-violent protest, she was tragically when the bulldozer ran her over.
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
And in response, there were, or even still, Facebook posts from Israelis making fun of her by making pancakes with her face.
It doesn't work like that.
According to Al Jazeera, a report states the Israel-Palestine conflict to be the deadliest conflict ever for journalists. More journalists have been killed in Gaza than in both World Wars, Vietnam, Yugoslavia, and Afghanistan combined, says the Cost of War Project, with Israel's war on Gaza having killed 232 journalists.
But what?
he was.
And I will say it once again, CPJ stated that since the war began in 2023, this has been the deadliest period for journalists since the CPJ began gathering data in 1992. Hila seems to imply that critics are uninformed. Why would Hila so confidently believe that Israel wouldn't bat an eye with Hassan coming to Gaza as a journalist? He happens to be one of the most prominent critics of Israel and quite a large voice for Palestine. Could it possibly mean that you might have a more biased view of the country when you are from there and have lived there for many years of your life?
He's never been to Gaza, never been to Israel. He doesn't know shit about it.
No, he doesn't.
He does not. But he talks like with such authority. Oh my God.
Maybe. Then someone in the chat calls Hila a child and she says it's crazy.
Bloodthirsty, vile children killers are
There.
dreaming about getting people killed. What a surprise.
What reality do they live in?
It's literally
It's
just a silly
crazy.
joke.
I mean, can we all agree that it was a mistake for Hila and Ethan to start reading chats from a Twitch streamer that they have been obsessively harassing? While the statement is incredibly hyperbolic, it does stem from the fact that she served in the IOF, even if she had a non-combative role. And yet she continues to read the chat and start to infer that these people are just being anti-Semitic.
It's also like the Jews run everything kind of vibe I'm getting, because like, yeah, we'll send him to Israel and we'll get somebody to kill him.
But what could be the most shocking part in all of this is when Hila seems to be on the verge of revealing something she didn't intend to.
It's not a war zone, it's a genocide.
Monster 1 and Female Monster 2.
Oh, it's not a
Despicable.
war zone, so we can't say that it's a war zone? That's not woke enough?
He's going to say it's not a war zone, it's a killing field.
No,
Whatever.
he said, that's what he's saying. It's not a war zone,
It's very
it's
different.
genocide.
Okay, you can go.
Okay, call it whatever you want. It's dangerous. I admit that, right? So disgusting.
Hila seems like she is mocking or downplaying the fact that the situation is a genocide, as if calling it a genocide is just about semantics rather than acknowledging the reality of mass civilian casualties and displacement. So would Hila also mock the wording of these doctors that have seen it firsthand?
I've worked in a number of conflict zones in different parts of the world. I was there at the time of the Rwandan genocide. I've never seen anything on this scale, ever, and that was also the view of all the experienced colleagues that I worked with.
In northern Gaza, with the military offensive that's been happening by the Israeli forces there, we're seeing clear signs of ethnic cleansing as Palestinian people have been forcibly displaced, trapped, and then bombed.
Then Ethan's quick dismissal with,
Okay, call it whatever you want. It's dangerous. I admit that. Right.
Reinforces this unwillingness to critically engage with a term, reducing a grave reality to a matter of preference rather than addressing its implications. After mocking Hassan for clarifying that it's not a war zone but a genocide, what are her thoughts on Holocaust survivor Arya Nair, who says this?
You have concluded that Israel is guilty of attempting genocide.
Yes.
That's a very heavy charge.
Yes.
So one could raise a question. Is Hila dissecting Hassan's every word because he's crowned the H3 podcast's mortal enemy? Or is there something else at play, like a deeper discomfort with anyone who speaks out for Palestine? Because when nearly every pro-Palestinian voice ends up labeled as anti-Semitic or a token Jew, it becomes a pattern. For example, there is MacLeod, a Jewish man himself, comedian and pro-Palestinian voice. Or, according to Hila and Ethan,
one of these guys who's like, he's Jewish, and he loves that because he allows himself to be tokenized to the max.
Yeah.
And in response to MacLeod's speech in a pro-Palestinian rally, Hila's feedback sounds like this.
You're not special for wanting peace. You know that, right?
Just keep in mind, guys, Ethan and Hila always pretend to stand for a peaceful solution. But even in a peaceful speech of a fellow Jewish man, they find something to mock. Is it because he speaks up for Palestine?
I am so proud to be marching with so many Jews and Gentiles of all ages, races, genders, and nationalities who are brave enough to demand an immediate ceasefire.
Yes, this man is so brave. Just speaking objectively, what is brave about what he's doing right now? He's
Who is
there
he demanding it from?
From question, I don't know.
Okay.
Karen Bassin? I don't know.
I'm not speaking to you as a representative of all Jews. I am a bad representative.
Why'd you even say that? It's like, bro, he's playing the token card.
Wait,
crazy.
so you're saying that Jews don't want ceasefire?
No, he says, I'm not a representative of all Jews because he's probably accused
yeah,
of being
but
a
so
token.
far all he said that he wants ceasefire, but then that does not represent all Jewish people.
Well,
I'm the one that wants ceasefire, but not those other Jewish evil people. Like, what do you think everybody wants, dumbass?
I came from a secular family, and the closest thing I got to a bar mitzvah is when I was 13. And I one time saw my dad send back soup for not being hot enough at the cafe in the Holocaust Museum. That was the thing that happened.
When does he start talking about how do we get ceasefire?
We're getting there, apparently. What a hack. He's a comedian, by the way. Quote unquote. He gave back soup at the Holocaust Museum.
Wow, you guys, so far you're so brave to be there and tell jokes and just
And the
get
Holocaust
applauded.
Museum.
Really brave.
Don't get me started on the Holocaust Museum. More like the Museum of Lies. Actually, that's funnily not even... This guy's so fucked.
Well, we were at the stupid museum.
Yeah, I remember.
And I saw that you weren't interested, and I wasn't also.
It was the Holocaust Museum.
I do not represent all Jews. No single person represents all Jews, as no single state represents all Jews. Especially not the state of Israel.
This is another weird thing.
Oh
Israel
my God.
Israel... This is a lie that I see Hassan and people pander. They say that Israel's going to war on behalf of Judaism. They have never... I don't believe...
Are MacLeod's words so out of line as they portray? Let's listen to Holocaust survivor Stefan Kapos, who spent his childhood in hiding during the Nazi regime and lost 15 members of his family in the Holocaust. Here he talks in an interview from May 2024 where he says the exact same thing as MacLeod in his speech.
I say this as a Holocaust survivor, that the genocide
in Gaza is not happening in my name and in our name.
So I know Hila was bored by the Holocaust Museum, but would she also push back against this Holocaust survivor for saying exactly what MacLeod did? That Israel doesn't speak for all Judaism. In Hila's eyes, MacLeod is doing a terrible job advocating for Palestine. This man is like a teddy bear. How can you tear apart a 2-minute fun and moving speech into a hateful 8-minute analysis? And sure, Hila says she wants peace. She said it herself.
Everybody's asking for a ceasefire. That's not brave. What do you mean? You want to be brave?
What does he think that I want and you want?
He said it. They say, and they want us. We want all Palestinians to die. That's what they say.
Why would anybody think that? When did I ever say anything like that? Indicate anything like that? And why would they think that anybody in Israel even wants that? Everybody just wants to move on and be able to live their life. Everybody wants peace. You're not special for wanting peace. You know that, right?
He's brave. Yeah, I love how he
that's like
congratulates.
the obvious take.
But if this is how she reacts to pro-Palestinian voices, then how much weight do her words really carry? They don't only go after public figures like MacLeod, but they also go for small content creators like this girl from TikTok. Out of respect for her privacy, I won't show her, but I will give a short summary on what her TikTok was. She describes a complicated and deeply emotional reaction towards her own Jewish community. She talks about seeing a group of Orthodox Jews, and her immediate thought wasn't just about shared identity, but about where they might stand on Israel's actions.
I don't want other Jewish people to think that I hate them, because that is not... That's not the case. I have lost so much faith in my own community, and I no longer feel this connection.
That internal conflict led to a moment of discomfort and even anger, not out of hatred for Jewish people, as she's really careful to clarify, but from frustration over the lack of support for Palestine. It's not about rejecting her identity, but about grappling with how it intersects with her morals and political stance. And this is how Hila's husband portrays the situation.
I saw this TikTok that blew my fucking mind. This girl, she's on a train in New York, and she's like, I saw these Orthodox Jews on the train, and the first thing I thought was, are they Zionists? Get the fuck away from me. I'm like, you hate Jewish people. And that had like 160,000 likes on TikTok. Wow. So what am I supposed to think as a Jewish person when this is a celebrated opinion to be on a train with Jewish people and your first thought is, get the fuck away from me, without knowing a single thing about them, without talking about them? That's anti-Semitism. I'm sorry to fucking spell it out.
That's an interesting take on her feelings. The host of Hila's podcast only missed all the context while she sat there with a raised eyebrow. Zero comment from her. Ironically, it was actually Hila who ended up echoing the very misrepresentation Ethan tried to push about the woman on TikTok.
I mean, I could take these guys a little bit more seriously if it wasn't for this curly ass shit. Like these fucking double curls.
That is disgusting.
It's just goofy.
But also, come on, wearing a full suit in the summer.
You know what? Whatever, dude. Whatever they want to do is fine. But
they stink the whole place for everyone.
Labeling non-anti-Semitic people as anti-Semitic says more about the person doing the labeling than it does about the people being labeled. It also shifts the conversation away from the actual topic, Palestinian human rights, occupation, etc., and puts the focus on alleged bigotry. But that's convenient, right, Hila? No one is allowed to talk about it anymore. Everything is anti-Semitism, or as Hila calls it,
anti-Semitism.
And if it were up to you, you would also love to see MacLeod fired for daring to talk to someone who got to you by trolling and IDF soldiers in a video game. And if you justify your words with the alleged CPS call that was made to the Klein's house, who half of the internet is responsible for apparently, keep in mind that MacLeod had bad empanada on his show way before that happened, and also that YouTube is full of compilations of you guys harassing everyone left and right. Another instance of Hila using her words to show her deep-rooted empathy of the suffering of Palestinians is during the H3's Cope stream for Trump's inauguration day.
Just the other day, Bibi fired a really good guy that a lot of people are pissed about, and he fired him because they had a disagreement, and that's like so Trump coded.
Now, I know Hila doesn't like to hear people mention this because, in their opinion, they have dealt with the situation accordingly and put it to the books.
Narc's greatest hits.
Yeah,
this is Narc's greatest hits.
Let's look into this a little deeper, and whilst we do that, keep in mind how she repeatedly tries to discredit the opinions of non-Israeli people who speak on the matter.
I think Ethan has a lot of credibility to talk about it. He lived there for 5 years and he's married to an Israeli.
No, you care about.
It's funny to like sit in America and think that you know better than somebody who lives in Israel.
Yoav Gallant was a military officer that served as Israel's Minister of Defense and was also the same guy that said that he had ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed, we are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly. Gallant's declaration of a complete siege where he cuts off all of these necessities amounts to collective punishment, which points to a potential breach of Geneva Conventions.
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
Calling an entire population human animals is deeply disturbing.
A really good guy did it.
Dehumanization is a key tactic used to justify ethnic cleansing.
Shouldn't have used that word. That was a bad choice.
Alas, Ethan would soon find the error of their ways and created an apology video for this wrongful judgment. Now, usually, apology videos are titled things like this. So what title do you think Hila and Ethan chose for their video? Here are 4 options. What do you think it's gonna be? Making things right, let's move on, oops, I just like the vibes, I'm suing. Which of these very realistic titles is going to be the title for the video where they apologize for the mistake of calling Yoav Gallant
A really good guy.
Time is up. The answer is yes. The video where you can find Hila apologizing and explaining why she said Yoav Gallant, a far-right genocide enabler, was a great guy, is titled Hassan is a Weasley Little Liar. The stuff writes itself. So let's have a look at Hila addressing this error.
Hello. I'm here to address something that happened on Thursday's show. We were doing our post-election cope stream. And
okay, hold on a second. Where is Hila? Why do we have this guy talking about this when Hila was the one that said
a really good guy?
Cabinet, who just yesterday was fired by Netanyahu because he wanted to end the war. And Netanyahu wants to continue the war. And therefore he fired him. Once he was fired, people in Israel took to the streets and are protesting, being a good thing.
Okay, here is when she comes out to talk. We are 4 minutes in. Now, I'm just gonna put this over here and okay.
I feel like the reason I brought it up was mainly to express the frustration with Bibi and him firing the one guy that was somewhat, attempting at moderation. It wasn't really so much to say Gallant is a good guy. I shouldn't have used that word. That was a bad choice on my part, considering stuff that he has said that I was not even thinking of. Really coming from the concerning feeling of like, we have Trump in office and Bibi just fired the guy that is opposing him. That's all I was trying to say, but I do understand that was not a good choice of words and I would not have said that again. So I'm stepping away for a little while from being on camera and being on the podcast. It's too much and it's not fair for everybody. And yeah.
So, 52 seconds and 96 milliseconds of Hila apologizing. She's gone now, and we're 5 minutes in. The video is 14 minutes long. What could you possibly be talking about? Oh, right. The video is called Hassan Piker is a Weasley Little... Okay.
What a fucking liar, dude.
Yeah, never mind. But if you can spend hours on a podcast but can't even take more than a minute to sincerely address your mistake and be the one that explains the error, it just makes you such a qualified speaker on the topic. And then this guy...
Little fucking liar.
To explain your wrongdoing, it doesn't look like a good time to outsource accountability. Kudos to H3 for recognizing that you just praised the genocide enabler. From all the feedback you received from the people, that's a thumbs up on their video from me. However, the explanation for this error sort of exposes their neglect in informing themselves of what's going on. This is what Ethan says before Hila makes her appearance.
Later, for whatever reason, this is the same guy who's advocating for the war to end in Israel. And Hila, looking over the news, sees that people are rioting, that people are upset, and that people who want the war to end are upset that he got fired, and that's basically all that happened. We're talking about the fact that he's the only person that wants to end the war, and I personally don't understand how that's not relevant. Here from The Guardian, a left-leaning newspaper you guys all probably know. Here's a headline. Benjamin Netanyahu fires Defense Minister Yoav Gallant.
I don't doubt Hila and Ethan would like for the war to end. She was operating off of the fact that this man had stated he wishes the war to end. But what does this say about how you read news articles and interpret them? Because from what Ethan said on behalf of Hila here, it sounds as if they're just reading headlines and calling it a day. And what was that about a certain someone that doesn't know a thing about this conflict?
He doesn't know shit about that conflict. He's never been to Gaza, never been to Israel. He doesn't know shit about it.
No, he doesn't.
He does not.
However, when confronted with this topic in moment once again in iDubbbz's Content Cop video, she seems to have a different reason as to why she said that.
I want to explain it because people bring it up non-stop. I apologize for it right away. When Ethan made a video to address this on his Ethan Klein channel,
next day I
made a quick appearance in that video just to say, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I shouldn't have called him a really good guy. Like, I don't know why I said it like that. The point I was just trying to make is that Bibi fired him because they were disagreeing.
Here, you don't need to paraphrase it. Let's watch it.
Yeah, why do you have to cut her off, dude? Let her cook. Okay, that's quite different from your explanation when you apologized. Ethan said that she was just reading headlines saying that they want the war to end. Hila then said that he was the only one that attempted moderation. And now she says that the point she was trying to make was that Netanyahu fired him because they were disagreeing. What were they disagreeing on? Let's take a look at the point she was trying to make in the original video.
He looked mean. I thought he was mean just because he looked mean.
No. Well, the big disagreement was that people are fighting for the Orthodox Jews to get drafted as well to the army because they're not.
Motherfuckers, dude.
But Israel...
That's an issue?
Yeah, the Orthodox don't serve.
They don't serve.
Yeah, it's like Amish people, too. They don't do that.
But everybody else has to. Everybody has to do it.
Sure.
So it's like, what the fuck?
Dude, the Orthodox are such leeches there.
Oh, you're saying the Orthodox Jews in Israel don't serve? I thought that like everyone had to.
Exactly, except the Orthodox.
And then the Orthodox...
Because they need to sit and pray for God all day.
Never mind, it's a dislike now. So just to be clear, Hila's concern is not that people are being conscripted into a violent occupation, but that some people get to skip the uniform and stay home to pray. The framing is not so much about systemic inequality and appears to be more about wanting broader participation in Israel's military forces. The same military force that likes to go on social media and post stuff inside of Palestinian homes like this, and also this. It's quite telling that Hila's complaint wasn't, why do people have to serve in a military accused of war crimes, but instead, why doesn't everyone have to? Let's go back in time to a podcast episode in 2017 where Hila recounts her time served in the Israeli military that is renowned for headlines like this, and this, and this. And not once has she shown remorse for being part of it, or I at least couldn't find a single clip. If it exists, please let me know in the comments and I will do right by it. Let's take a closer look to show you what I mean by having no remorse for it. Hila was born in Tel Aviv. In the podcast episode featuring Hila, she explained that she attended the mandatory IOF service from around 2005 to 2007, I assume. The other option, according to them on the podcast, would have been 6 months in prison. She met Ethan while he attended a heritage trip fully paid for by, to quote Ethan, rich Jews from around the world to connect with fellow Israelis to get married. A very Zionistic event, as Ethan stated. But he didn't really care about that back then, and Hila was still part of the IOF back then. Eventually, she and Ethan lived in Israel together for 5 years before they moved together to America. In those years, Hila wanted to attend art school but got declined and applied again a year later. Why is this in my script? Hila proceeds to talk about how her military service began.
How was your experience in the military?
It was okay. It happened right after there was some kind of a second war in... Where was it? In Gaza?
I remember that, yeah.
There was some sort of a small war.
Yeah.
When I was there, and
as we can see, she doesn't seem to even know what war this was, and referred to it as a small war. The small war Hila is talking about is known as the Second Intifada. And just to give you a little bit of context, the Second Intifada was an uprising from Palestine, largely a response against Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories. including the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem that began around September 2000 and went on for about 5 years. It was triggered by years of facing systemic oppression, restricted movement, and military crackdowns, all by Israel. No word from Hila about how Palestinians faced really harsh living conditions under occupation, which included severe disruptions in daily life, including food and medical shortages. What's more is that the Second Intifada actually shaped the policies and military doctrine of the IOF. IOF's approach to security, surveillance, and control over Palestinian territories today is actually deeply rooted in the Second Intifada. The normalization of collective punishments, the construction of the separation wall, the expansion of settlements, all have their origins in this period. The death toll was highly disproportionate, with Palestinian casualties vastly outnumbering Israeli ones. Why does Hila not mention any of these? If she personally did not participate in war crimes, she should be willing to confront these uncomfortable truths when discussing her IOF service. Anything less risks erasing the immense toll it has taken on Palestinian lives. Her detachment from the suffering experienced by Palestinians is quite telling as to how much she cares about any of this.
So my job was to when they send officers or people to go serve, I had to logistically help with their hotel or a room, things like that. But it was all on the computer. It just felt like...
So secretary.
Yeah, and it was super boring and I really hated it.
Come on, Hila. This is your chance to tell us that contributing to the oppression of Palestinians didn't sit right with you. This is your time to shine.
Because it was just
yes,
I had to take a bus super early.
What?
Go there, spend the whole day, go back home. I hated it. So I tried to change my role.
It was super boring and she had to take a really early bus. Hila says she would have found a way to leave the IOF if she wouldn't have liked her new position.
You can apply for it. They're going to give you something else, completely random. I decided to do that, and if I don't like the second one, then I'll just find a way to get out of the army.
It was that bad?
Yeah, I hated everything about it, didn't want to do it. It felt like I wasn't doing anything, like I was just wasting my life. It could get really frustrating, I don't know. And you got to do it for 2 years.
At this point, she has indicated that it was her personal choice to stay in the IOF. Hila has stated in the past that it is honorable to serve in the IOF.
For one person to decide I'm not going to do it is a very selfish decision because meanwhile you're not doing it, everybody else is doing it and putting their life on hold. That's the whole country. It's mandatory service. It's the whole country.
There's nothing wrong. I hold to this.
And there's other countries that have mandatory service. You're just being racist. If you have a problem with the whole country,
including
that's racist.
Turkey,
yeah,
rich
and
enough
my
to flee the
parents
country.
were not the rich kind that will pay to get me out. But even if they were, they would not agree to that because they think it's important to serve like everybody else in the country. I mean, it's a very selfish move to decide, okay, I'm not going to do it, but everybody else will.
What did her husband say 2 years ago on this podcast?
I never faked ticks. Actually, no, I did one time. That's not true.
Really?
I was being recruited for the military when I was in Israel. And I told him I have Tourette's, which I guess disqualifies you for the draft.
Wait, you faked ticks to get out of the draft?
No, I didn't fake ticks. I have Tourette's, but I went for the interview and they were asking me questions and my ticks aren't always visible.
Right.
It's not always
yeah.
And so they make you feel like such a fucking piece of shit.
That's based.
And so I started doing like this, but those are ticks I had.
Yeah.
But I was like, and then when I did that, I felt so stupid. They're like, oh, see, he has ticks.
Getting out of being drafted into the IDF is the one time.
I was not doing the IDF, bro. I was not doing that. I was not doing it.
Such a striking contrast in perspectives here.
I filled out that form and I tried it, and then I somehow ended up in a better place that I liked a lot more.
So Hila stated that she ended up in a better place. She relocated from Tel Aviv to Ramallah. And just to give you a quick overview of the historical context, Ramallah was effectively occupied by Israel in 2005, despite being officially part of the Palestinian Authority under the Oslo Accords. The Israeli army controlled access to and from Ramallah, with roadblocks and checkpoints severely restricting Palestinian movement.
I somehow ended up in a better place that I liked.
Her new position was apparently another secretary job in the Dutchifat battalion.
The new one, a base that was far from my house, so you go there for the whole week and then you come back for the weekend.
So you preferred that? Were you gone for a whole week?
I did did.
Interesting. Why?
It was kind of like just more of an adventure, more of a different experience. I preferred than to just go to a boring job, sit on the computer and go back home at the end of every day. I don't know. I was in Dukhifat, that's in charge of the area of Ramallah. That brigade has like a main officer, so I was his secretary.
Okay, so you were right below the big boy. Cool.
Under the big boys. Cool.
It's hard to explain, but for some reason it was more interesting. I enjoyed it more.
You told me once you went on like a mission with them to like a terrorist city.
Yeah.
That was kind of a crazy story.
Yeah, my officers and like the soldiers in that brigade, they would go every night on a raid in Ramallah to arrest terrorists. So one time I wanted to go with them just to experience it.
Why? You just were all of a sudden had an urge to go with them?
I just wanted to see what it's like.
Right.
I wanted to see it. They took me with them one night, even though they weren't supposed to. You're driving in this like jeep that's bulletproof. So I was in the jeep. As soon as we entered Ramallah, the people in the city started shooting us.
Wow.
And I heard like a bullet hit the jeep like right next to my head.
Did it like dent or just
No,
you
you
heard
just
it?
hear it. I mean, it was just interesting.
They were so someone actually was shooting the car when you went in there right away.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, I walked with them to one house.
Okay.
I did get out of the car once.
Did they arrest anyone that night?
They did.
Did they bring it in the same car with you?
No.
Was it like, how did you feel? Was it horrifying?
It was strange. Very, very weird.
How so?
I don't know. Just you see people in the house, and then it's like the soldiers just walk into the house and look through their and find guns, and the whole thing is really surreal.
Does it feel like a normal neighborhood, or does it feel like, oh, this is scary?
No, it actually looked like a nice city.
Hila, recounting her little adventure, smiles as she's talking about how their vehicle got shot at while they were invading homes in Ramallah.
Yeah, they shot at you?
Yeah.
Oh my! Were you scared?
It was pretty weird.
You
Yeah,
were
we were in a jeep in a really risky area.
Yeah.
And then there was like a right here.
No!
It hit the jeep right next to
Oh
my
my god!
ear.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! And did you smile like you're smiling now, or?
I think I did.
Yeah.
I think I did.
Well, did you? I mean, what do you do? I mean, do you crowd? You just did that? That's so funny. If we cut in the past and we saw that and she was doing that, that would be the funniest thing I've ever seen.
There is still no word from her that Ramallah is actually a Palestinian city, not even in that moment when Ethan called it a terrorist city.
Yeah.
Despite the fact it was already under Israeli occupation during her time there. Hila, recounting her time in the IOF, was that she was bored working as a secretary, wanted to go on a road trip, and even admits she would have tried to get out of it if her new role was boring too, all while smiling. Then, any attempt from Ethan to bring at least some critical thought of this particular scenario of raiding a Palestinian home, we get this.
Are there lessons, disciplines, things that you learned, that you retained from that period in your life? How did it change you going through that?
I'm not sure that it changed me. I think the biggest thing is just like being put in a place with a group of people that maybe in normal life you wouldn't necessarily become friends with, but in this situation you just become friends with them and they become your family. So that aspect of it was interesting. But I mean, I don't know.
It was just some bullshit job for you for 2 years.
In a way.
Hila comes across as detached. You can't help but infer that she is simply unwilling to confront the moral weight of the topic. There's no reflection, no critical engagement, just surface-level remarks that sidestep the deeper conversation. And when you think Hila served in the IOF long before October 7th, then let me tell you that does not mean that the IOF did not already have a backlog of widespread documentation of its war crimes and atrocities. And if you think she just seems shy or struggled to articulate her thoughts, well, let me also tell you that she had no trouble expressing her thoughts, her take, and herself earlier in the episode when discussing the involvement of Louis C.K. in the Me Too movement.
I I felt really sad. Like yesterday, especially when the whole story officially came out. For some reason, with someone like Harvey Weinstein, I don't care as much. It's sad in a different way. Just sad that it happens. But with Louis, I kind of feel like he died yesterday.
He said in his apology, he justified it by saying, well, I asked girls first if I could show them my dick.
Yeah.
But he acknowledges, like...
The situation is much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So even if you say yes at the moment, as the lady, even if she said yes at the moment, I think the situation is so surreal. You're like with one of your idols.
Right.
And you're thinking at the moment, this is weird, but I don't know what to do. So you say yes, but later
Not even expecting him to necessarily even
you think
strip
maybe he's
naked.
kidding or something.
Yeah.
But later you can think about it and be like, that was really fucked up.
Or how she views American students protesting against the Israeli government.
Talk about someone who's going to UC Berkeley, paid by their parents $200,000 tuition on campus protesting Israel. Do you find that ironic?
I do. When I lived in Israel, I used to criticize Israel a lot.
Yeah,
like,
me too,
as an
actually.
Israeli,
Yeah.
and the army and a lot of stuff. But when we moved here and I started to go on Reddit and stuff like that, and just being more aware of like the online criticism and there's
It's not just online, but it's
not just
general.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just became more aware of like the criticism here of Israel and in general around the world, and it's really, I personally think it's so ironic. It's just like, I don't know, it's kids sitting here in like beautiful California criticizing it, like you don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
Now, I get it. You were 18 at the time, you've grown up in Israel all your life. All you've seen and heard are horror stories because you're surrounded by Israeli media. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion hadn't released yet. Access to the World Wide Web wasn't so common. How are you supposed to think to yourself, maybe we shouldn't contribute to the oppression of Palestinians? I don't want to go to jail and have a hard time getting a job. I have no idea that in 2025 I'm going to get paid to crash out live on a podcast. Like in this same episode when she talks about her perspective as a child in Israel.
Let's say less specific criticism, a more general, like they build a wall and Israel should be a one state with Palestinians and Israel's all living together. They should reduce the borders and remove the gate. That to me seems like super ignorant.
It is, because when I grew up, I couldn't really take a bus. I was afraid of blowing up.
Right.
And now it doesn't really happen. So the wall did help. So should we not have a wall?
Can you explain about the wall for people who don't know about it?
I don't know like how to explain
Well, I guess simply it's like...
It was built to prevent this attack.
It's understandable that as a child, you feared for your life and saw the wall as a protective measure. No one can blame you for not wanting to be harmed. But while Hila defends the wall as a necessary security measure, as a grown adult here, 29 years old, she fails to acknowledge its broader implications. It's 2017, we have technology and access to information now. Maybe we could be asking ourselves, who decided a wall was the answer? And what alternatives were ignored? When you build a wall, are you defending yourself or are you just deepening the divide? Why do the people whom the wall is designed to stave off feel so desperate that they resort to such tragic violent acts? The wall she spoke of isolated communities, stole land, and enforced apartheid conditions. You can recognize that the fear was real while still being honest about how the wall is a tool of oppression. All these clips are so many years from that time and struggles to apply the same level of introspection when recalling their involvement in something as significant as their military service in the IOF. And she has no hesitation in defending mandatory service in Israel to this day.
I mean, when you're growing up with constant terror attacks, the army is a necessity. And I'm sorry if people think that's a controversial statement. That is the reality of Israel.
She has to be so influenced by Israeli media to not comprehend that the same IOF she believes is a necessity is the same IOF that has continuously made Gaza to become the deadliest place on earth for children for the last 3 consecutive years. Every time she gets called out or criticized for things she said on the podcast, she gets super defensive and brushes off any critique or concern about this in such a annoyed, guilt-dumping and condescending manner.
Let's remind everybody how old that was. That was like so long ago. Narc's greatest hits.
Yeah,
this is Narc's greatest
I think
hits.
he may...
This is just like, I can't take this seriously, but I have to because this is crazy. This person doesn't know what they're talking about at all. Anti-Semitism in other countries that have mandatory service, you're just being racist. If you have a problem with the whole country, Ethan is allowed to point it out.
And also,
And if that's too much for you, maybe get off the internet.
You don't have to be the one that is out there in the field with a weapon in your hands to contribute to the oppression of Palestinians. You also actively contribute to the oppression of Palestinians when you are a low-level secretary behind a desk, managing the life of someone so that they have more time to unalive Palestinians. And you are more of a contributor to this when you actively seek out a role you can enjoy more and then accept it because you are so bored. And what does it make you when you participate in a raid in a nice Palestinian city just to watch what's going on because you were curious? And I'm not asking her to get on the podcast right now and apologize for what you did 20 years ago. I don't need to ask someone for something that maybe warrants a response. This type of attitude towards her mandatory service is a contributing reason as to why people not only see you as someone without a good take, but also a soft take. Thanks, guys. Subscribing is free. And despite the countless credible news articles that exist available at your disposal, just look at this clip of them reflecting on this podcast in 2023.
Arrest anyone that night?
They did.
Did they bring it in the same car with you?
No.
Oh, different car.
There's a few.
It's November 2nd, 2023. Gaza is under relentless bombardment. Thousands are dead, most of them civilians. And Hila, an Israeli who served in the IOF, is on camera watching an old podcast clip where she talks about her military service. You'd think in that moment she might say something, reflect, acknowledge, criticize, but no. She just sucks on a lollipop. This is the same person who insists no one else can speak on the conflict unless they're Israeli, not even Jews from outside the country. And yet, when given the chance to speak from that so-called position of authority, she says nothing while the bombs fall. However, Ethan has something to add.
It's so complicated.
Yeah.
From their perspective, it's like, these guys.
But they go specifically to
Oh my God, I'm almost like even empathizing with the Palestinians in this fucking clip.
My goodness. A round of applause for this hell of a man. Voices for Palestinians Instagram, put that post back up. By God. Yes. Yes. Fast forward to February 7th, 2025, and Hila getting a Star of David tattoo. Ethan says she's embracing her identity. Sure, that's one way to look at it. Although I must say that this pose with this tattoo could leave some people to wonder what's happening here. And when the backlash rolls in, with people calling her out for the tattoo, some even comparing it to a swastika, she's suddenly ready to speak. She's not silent then. She's fully here to talk about the anti-Semitism she faces and call people out. But where was this voice when the hard questions about Israel's actions were on the table? Where was the voice when it was time to acknowledge the responsibility tied to her identity? When watching this, it left me with a weird aftertaste. When she watches Hassan use the word genocide in regards to Israel's actions,
oh, it's not a war zone, so we can't say that it's a war zone? That's not woke enough?
She gets snarky and defensive. The crickets are still cricketing about her lack of public criticism in regards of almost everything Israel does. But when it's time to defend her right to wear a symbol that, let's be honest, not only represents Judaism but also Israel, she's loud. She got the words to speak up. But when it's time to speak out about the actions of her country, the silence is deafening.
It's successful in its own right, and there's really nothing shady going on with Teddy Fresh.
So, Hila Klein, fashion mogul, creative genius, and self-proclaimed authority in what makes good merch. She's got opinion.
Still not. The pants are just terrible.
Terrible. This is Brazil.
What?
My goodness. Why are they not more swag?
And especially when it comes to Hassan Piker's merch.
Wait, so why is he dressed like that? Let me see this one with the sword. Oh my God.
Yeah, bro, what are you doing with the sword there, bud? What year is it?
What does the shirt
Is this
say?
fucking
Narrative overcomes truth. Oh my God. The art is cool. Hassan sitting on his computer reading chat.
I like the art on all of it. I agree that the captions make it kind of...
It's the concept.
Yeah, the art...
I have no problem with the art at all.
In her eyes, his photo shoot is cringe and themeless. For someone that is the creative force behind Teddy Fresh and seemingly wants to be a fashion mogul, you don't have to like Hassan to understand there is a deliberate and recognizable theme here. Aestheticized political rebellion through modern streetwear with a mall ninja vibe leaning into satire. Is it so hard to recognize that? Now, I'm not saying this because I'm upset that someone said mean things about his merch. This is just a great example of how personal bias can make someone look like a huge hypocrite. Because if you're going to critique someone else's brand, your own better be good. And that brings us to Teddy Fresh.
Tell me, what does Teddy Fresh mean? How? What does how?
I don't know. It's a little teddy bear.
Hila has always emphasized how much of Teddy Fresh is her original vision. The brand, she claims, is deeply personal, uniquely designed, and all her own work. In 2017, again, the same interview with her husband, she explained how she loves to draw her designs by hand. Back then, she was still in the process of understanding their own concept and developing Teddy Fresh. Now, 8 years later, I wonder if Hila found her concept. Because what we see a lot of in their marketing is this kidcore. Adult models dressed like kids and presented like kids and teenagers, paired with environments that contain things like a poster with the words on the wall.
Referred to as a lolly.
Show us.
It's like a genre of hentai where the girls are very young.
And it's interesting to see her reaction to this because her own brand's marketing sometimes leans into aesthetics that aren't, of course, the same thing, but kind of in the same neighborhood. And then those themes paired with featuring young children, also with their faces unblurred, is undoubtedly critical. I just want to say that this is quite irresponsible and that if the issue is about how people present their merch, then Teddy Fresh needs to take a look into a mirror. Now let's talk a little bit of Control-C, Control-V. There have been a few instances where Teddy Fresh had been accused of dipping a little too deep into the honey jar of inspiration from fellow designers. Some might even say they snorkeled. Now, I just want to be clear that I am not accusing Teddy Fresh and the people behind it of stealing designs. I just want to point out some similarities here. The Teddy Bear X-Ray long sleeve tee from 2021 is particularly interesting because two parts might appear as quite similar to two separate designs. This is a long sleeve tee from Hila Klein. It looks like the body was ripped directly from this design by Hila Klein, except for the head, and Illustrator's portfolio called Seagal's Design has a teddy bear with a head that could be identical to the head of this teddy bear from Teddy Fresh. Look at the sewing holes of the button. They're at the exact same position. I understand that it's hard to come up with new designs, but come on, didn't you draw a teddy bear like a lot of times?
I made all kinds of sketches for the teddy bear. That's actually the shirt, the shirt that has all the Teds all over it.
Oh, was that all the...
Those were all my attempts at making the logo.
It's very much possible that the design was licensed, but when was there maybe disclosure about Teddy Fresh deciding to license designs? It's okay to be transparent about wanting to save time, resources, and money.
So we didn't realize it was an exact copy until it was brought up recently. And then people say, well, why don't you do your due diligence? I'm like, bro, it's a knitting book from 1995. The design is dead from this planet. It was like some cosmic coincidence that someone even found it in a thrift store.
Sure, if this is the truth, then fair enough. However, it's crazy how frequently cosmic coincidences appear to occur. Here is a Teddy Fresh sick-ass graphic of a bear about to maul someone, and here is a PS3 game from 2013 called Cabela's Dangerous Hunts.
This is a licensed image, but honestly, it's so different too. Like, even making the accusation is kind of insane. It may not even be a licensed image. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But like, it's a video game cover, and this is completely different.
When you take a closer look, there is still water around the bear's paw like in the original PS3 video game art, and you can see that the bear has a little stub because the text was blocking, so they just cut its arm off. Whatever, in the words of Ethan Klein,
it doesn't matter anyway.
I just find it kind of funny how they write off one similarity as, oh, interesting.
I will admit is a little too close for comfort. I don't know what happened with this one, to be honest. Yeah, it's Prada. I recognize that sweater. It's a Prada sweater with the flames. I mean, this one's on a hoodie. Yeah, I mean, this one's a little sus. I agree. I'm not sure what happened here. That's probably maybe the only one that he could call me out on, that I can probably look a little deeper into.
And also, like I mentioned earlier, I reached out to the charity organizations in their good cause section to verify the donations that have been made. Because why not fact check the fashion brand by H3? And while Victims First spoke very highly of Teddy Fresh and said that they were the largest donator at that time with an awesome contribution of $119,556,000 to the centralized Uvalde victims, Let's just say that one of the other organizations listed here, who do not want to be mentioned at this time, have never received donations from Teddy Fresh, nor did they receive any communication from them. Maybe it was an error. I do hope that whatever happened there will get resolved and that Teddy Fresh can continue to have a great impact on various causes in the future.
By the way, she goes, Ethan needs to be criticized for being pro-Israel, and also Hila said bad crazy stuff. Okay, well, clearly you're going to have evidence to support that, right?
Absolutely. Please fasten your seatbelts, stow your disbelief, and prepare for a smooth descent into some absolutely wild podcast commentary. Here, Hila and Ethan are reacting to iDubbbz's Content Cop video, in which he contextualizes his wife's background, half Lebanese, half Irish, pointing out that historically, her people were on the receiving end of colonial violence.
Lisa is half Lebanese and half Irish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we know.
For anyone unfamiliar, the Irish have been on the receiving end of a lot of oppression and genocide. On the part
of the
Lebanese, they've received a lot of oppression and attacks from the IDF. So Anissa is very well
And sir, do you happen to know of any violence perhaps coming towards Israel, where Hila grew up? Perhaps from Lebanon, Hezbollah, perhaps? Does that ring a bell to you, you dumb, ignorant f***? How dare you attempt to lecture me on this conflict?
Familiar with the propaganda and the shit coming out of Israel. Choosing now, out of all the times, to be like, please defend me. No, we're not going to fucking defend you.
Okay, so this is very interesting. Wow. He says on the day that CPS was called and we're understandably heated, he goes, no, I'm not going to defend you. Why? Because you're Israeli.
You're Israeli.
That's literally what he said.
I mean,
his
he
argument.
made sure
Do I have it
to
wrong?
include the flags so a 5-year-old could understand what he was saying. So yes, that's what he was saying.
I feel like that's exactly what he's saying. Correct me if I'm wrong.
He put the Israel flag and he said, no, she's not going to defend you.
Yeah, I just don't want people to be like, that's not what he meant. I mean, I don't see it any other way.
Stop hallucinating anti-Semitism.
There is so much to unpack here. For example, Hezbollah was formed in 1982 in response to the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. How on earth can you, Hila, sit there and let Ethan talk down generational trauma while flipping this around into a narrative that makes your home country look like the victim in all of this? You, who once claimed that non-Israelis can't speak out without authority on these matters. I honestly wonder if you even realize that it was Israel, your own country, that occupied Lebanon for 18 years during your lifetime, or that in 2006, following the killing of 3 Israeli soldiers and the capture of 2 by Hezbollah, Israel responded not with diplomacy, but with massive airstrikes, artillery, and a ground invasion, resulting in deaths of over 1,100 Lebanese civilians. Civilians, not soldiers, people. And who did that? The IOF. Yes, the ones you don't want to be called terrorists.
Well, listen, they can call Israeli soldiers terrorists, but like, you weren't a soldier. They didn't go that far.
I mean, I think even calling soldiers terrorists is not accurate.
The army, people should serve in because it is honorable.
A singer or something, and then they still go into the army and everybody will commend them. Like, that's really nice. You know, you're paying your duty.
And you guys sit there and you laugh and say,
oh, wow.
Yeah, we know.
For anyone unfamiliar, the Irish...
And I honestly find it remarkable how Hila can say,
stop hallucinating anti-Semitism.
Right after victimizing herself because he showed the Israeli flag, even though he was only talking about the IOF in that moment.
I mean,
his
he
argument.
made sure
Do I have it
to
wrong?
include the flags so a 5-year-old could understand what he was saying. So yes, that's what he was saying. He put the Israel flag and he said, no, she's not going to defend you. Stop hallucinating anti-Semitism.
Now, I want to be very clear that obviously Hila and Ethan have the right to criticize Hamas, but it sure is interesting to see what they criticize exactly. Like here when they pause right after hearing that Israel's occupation must end in all Palestinian land.
The occupation must end in the Gaza Strip. No, I'm talking about all Palestinian lands. Once again, that's funny because it's exactly related to what what he accuses me of spreading Israeli propaganda about. My point is when Israelis hear from the ocean to the sea, they hear all of Israel. And guess what? That's what the guy from Hamas is saying on the screen of the clip you showed.
I don't understand. If a movement is for peace between 2 people and one people is telling you they're not comfortable with the statement, shouldn't we change the statement to something that both people can get behind?
No, because they'll say, well, people will say that Israel's the aggressor, so they shouldn't have to adjust anything.
Yeah, but that's like watered down American version of what's happening there.
A moment of striking honesty from someone who is often quick to silence criticism. I wrote a bunch of conclusions for this video, but to simply summarize it, my takeaway with Hila is that no one can win. Thanks for watching the video. Bye-bye. Now, just to add one thing, if you believe Ethan's views and his moral stands were maybe indoctrinated by his wife, let me show you one final clip.
So it's really frustrating because like the way I always thought about it is like I was just born here. Right. I don't care. Like I don't know the history and I don't care. We're all like, just people here.
Yeah. People
and now I have to choose sides and I have to.
And I was saying that's why the reason I left is because like I'm like, this isn't my fight. And Hila, I think since before she knew, thought it wasn't her fight. She never belonged there. And it's like, I don't really want to be involved in this because when you live in Israel, you start to learn things, or maybe I don't know if it's a brainwashing thing or you're with the club, right? You're with that tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it gets through to you.
Yeah.
So before I went to Israel, I was very pro-Palestinian because I went to a very liberal college. I went to UC Santa Cruz, and there it's like, they literally have protests on the campus of like Israeli soldiers executing Palestinians.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, yeah, that's totally what it is.
Yeah.
But when you go there and then you learn, because you spend time with that tribe and you understand all their talking points and it's just so confusing, dude.
I do wonder what happened down the line to these guys, but thanks for watching the video. Bye-bye.